There is a question that has haunted historians, geneticists, and Bulgarians themselves for over 1,000 years. How did a Turkic horse people from the Eurasian steppe ride into the Balkans, conquer a Slavic population twice their size, build one of the most powerful empires in medieval Europe, and then completely disappear into the very people they conquered? Not through defeat, not through massacre, but through something far more extraordinary. They merged, and emerging they vanished, genetically almost without a trace. Modern DNA testing of over 800 Bulgarian men found that Central Asian and Turkic haplogroups, the genetic signature of the original Bulgar tribe, account for just 1.5% of the Bulgarian gene pool today. 1.5%. The people who gave Bulgaria its name left almost no DNA behind. So who do modern Bulgarians actually descend from? What ancient bloodlines built this nation? And what does the genetic record tell us about the most brutal empire in medieval Balkan history? This is the Bulgarian DNA mystery. 7,000 years of bloodlines. The blinded army, the skull cup, and the man who died on a gallows so a nation could live. Before we go anywhere else, let's establish what Bulgarian DNA actually looks like today, because the numbers are extraordinary. The largest peer-reviewed study of Bulgarian genetics, published in PLOS One in 2013, testing 808 Bulgarian men, found that the Bulgarian gene pool is overwhelmingly European. Not Turkic, not Central Asian, European. The three dominant haplogroups are I2A at roughly 20%, one of the oldest lineages in Europe, carried by Paleolithic hunter-gatherers who inhabited the Balkans before farming even existed. E-V13 at 18%, a lineage associated with the ancient Thracians and Neolithic Balkan farmers, present in Bulgaria for at least 7,000 years. And R1A at 17 to 18%, the genetic signature of the Slavic migrations of the 6th and 7th centuries AD. Together, these three haplogroups account for over half the Bulgarian male population. The Bulgar steppe contribution? 1.5%. That number is going to become very important as this story unfolds, because it tells us something remarkable. Bulgaria is named after a people who are genetically almost invisible in the nation they created. The story begins not with khans or emperors. It begins with the land. 7,000 years ago, the territory we now call Bulgaria was among the most advanced regions of the ancient world. The Varna culture, a Neolithic civilization centered on the shores of the Black Sea, produced the oldest confirmed gold artifacts ever discovered on Earth. Gold jewellery, ornaments, and ceremonial objects buried in graves between 4,500 and 4,000 BC. Not Egypt, not Mesopotamia, not Greece, Varna, in what is now northeastern Bulgaria. The people who made that gold carried haplogroup EV13 and G2A, Anatolian Neolithic farmer lineages that had spread into the Balkans from the Near East during the great agricultural expansion of 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. Their DNA is still in modern Bulgarians today. That is what the E-V13 18% represents. 7,000 years of unbroken genetic presence in the same land. Then came the steppe. Around 3,500 BC, the great Bronze Age migrations began. The Yamnaya people, steppe pastoralists from the Pontic Caspian grasslands north of the Black Sea, swept westward and southward into Europe. They carried haplogroup R1b and R1a. They brought horses, wheels, and the Indo-European language family that would eventually produce Greek, Latin, Celtic, Germanic, and Slavic. In the Balkans, Their arrival created a new people, the Thracians. The Thracians are one of history's great overlooked civilizations. By the first millennium BC, they occupied most of what is now Bulgaria, northern Greece, and European Turkey. They were not a unified state. They were a warrior culture of tribes and kingdoms, ferocious in battle, famous for their cavalry, and worshipped by the Greeks as the people of Ares, god of war. Their DNA was a fusion, the ancient Neolithic EV13 farmers mixed with incoming steppe ancestry. The resulting genetic profile is almost identical to what modern Bulgarians carry in their deepest layers. The Thracians were here for over 1,000 years. Then Rome arrived. Rome conquered Thrace in 46 AD under Emperor Claudius. For the next 350 years, the territory was Roman, a province called Thracia, bisected by military roads, dotted with Roman cities, administered by Roman governors. Latin-speaking soldiers and administrators intermarried with the local Thracian population. Roman haplogroups, primarily R1b from the Italian garrison troops, mixed into the Balkan gene pool. But Rome could not hold the Balkans forever. By the late 4th century AD, the empire was fracturing, and across the Danube a new wave was gathering. In the 5th and 6th centuries AD, the Slavs poured into the Balkans. Who were the Slavs? They were an agricultural people from the forests and river plains of what is now Ukraine and Poland. Their Y chromosome haplogroup was R1a, specifically the subclade R1a-M458, associated with Central and Eastern European Slavic expansion. They did not conquer the Balkans through military force alone. They settled it. Village by village, river valley by river valley, they occupied the land that Rome could no longer defend. By 600 AD, the Slavic tribes had become the demographic majority in most of what is now Bulgaria. That is the R1a, 17 to 18% in modern Bulgarians. Not an invasion that left a trace. A migration that became the foundation. And now the Bulgars arrived. In 679 or 681 AD, historians debate the exact date, a Turkic people called the Bulgars crossed the Danube under their Khan, Asparuh. Where had they come from? Originally from the Pontic steppe, the same vast grasslands north of the Black Sea that had launched the Yamnaya migrations 3,000 years earlier. The Bulgars were nomadic horsemen, fierce warriors, and a ruling elite accustomed to building empires from the saddle. Under Asparuh, they did something extraordinary. They didn't simply raid the Balkans and retreat. They stopped. They fought the Byzantine Empire, and they won. In 681 AD, the Byzantine Emperor Constantine IV was forced to sign a treaty recognizing the First Bulgarian Empire. It was one of the few times in Byzantine history that an emperor paid tribute to a conqueror. Asparuh established his capital at Pliska, in what is now northeastern Bulgaria, and he did something that would define Bulgarian history for the next 3 centuries. He made an alliance with the Slavic majority already living in the territory. The Bulgars provided the military leadership, the Slavs provided the numbers. And slowly, over generations, the Bulgars disappeared into their own empire. The next name you need to know is Krum. Krum Khan ruled Bulgaria from roughly 803 to 814 AD. And if Asparuh built the first Bulgarian empire, Krum forged it in blood. In 811 AD, the Byzantine Emperor Nicephorus I launched a massive invasion of Bulgaria. He sacked Krum's capital at Pliska. He looted the treasury. He burned the palace. He should have left then. He didn't. Krum retreated into the mountain passes of the Balkans and waited. Then he closed the trap. In the Battle of the Varbitsa Pass on the 26th of July, 811, Krum's forces annihilated the Byzantine army. Emperor Nicephorus I was killed in the battle, the only Byzantine emperor to die in combat against an enemy for nearly 400 years. His son was blinded. His entire court was either killed or captured. And Krum did something that passed into legend. He had the emperor's skull lined with silver and made it into a drinking cup. He used it to toast his own boyars, his nobles, at feasts. According to Theophanes the Confessor, he offered the cup to the Slavic princes who had allied with him, saying, "Drink with me, so that the Slavic lords may rejoice." The skull cup of Nicephorus I. One of the most viscerally powerful images in medieval history, and a perfect symbol of what Bulgaria had become under Krum, an empire that had broken and humiliated the greatest Christian power in the world. After Krum, Bulgaria needed something different. It needed legitimacy. It found it in Boris I. Boris ruled Bulgaria from 852 to 889 AD, and the decision he made in 864 AD may be the single most consequential act in Bulgarian history. He converted Bulgaria to Christianity. This was not a spiritual awakening. It was one of the most calculated political manoeuvres of the medieval world. Boris understood that pagan Bulgaria was surrounded by Christian powers. Byzantium to the south, the Frankish Empire to the west, the Moravians to the north. To be pagan was to be a target. To be Christian was to be a partner. But Boris played both sides. He initially negotiated with Rome, threatening Byzantium with a Frankish alliance. Then he switched, accepting baptism from Constantinople and receiving an archbishop in return. The Bulgarian church was established with significant autonomy, a victory that neither Rome nor Constantinople had quite intended to give him. Then Boris did something even more brilliant. When Cyril and Methodius, the two Byzantine scholars who had created the Glagolitic script for the Slavic language, died, their disciples were expelled from Moravia. Boris welcomed them to Bulgaria. He gave them land, resources, and royal support. In Bulgaria, the Glagolitic script was refined into what we now call Cyrillic. The writing system used today by Russians, Ukrainians, Serbs, Macedonians, and hundreds of millions of other people was codified in Bulgaria in the 8080s under Boris I. Boris's son, Simeon, inherited an empire. He built a civilization. Simeon I ruled from 893 to 927 AD. He had been educated in Constantinople, fluent in Greek, steeped in Byzantine theology and literature, a man of extraordinary intellectual ambition. And when he came to power, he turned Bulgaria into a rival of Byzantium itself. He expanded the empire westward to the Adriatic Sea, north to the Carpathians. He fought and won multiple wars against Byzantium, pushing the empire to the brink of collapse. In 913 AD, he stood at the gates of Constantinople itself, and he declared himself Tsar, Emperor of Bulgaria and the Romans, the first ruler outside of Byzantium to claim the title of Tsar, the first Slavic emperor in history. His court at Preslav became a centre of learning. Translators worked day and night, producing Bulgarian editions of Greek theological, historical, and literary texts. The Bulgarian language was used not just for prayer, but for philosophy, law, and poetry. Simeon's golden age is considered the apex of medieval Bulgarian culture. By his time, the Bulgar-Slav genetic merger was effectively complete. Simeon himself was genetically Bulgarian in the modern sense, a fusion of Slavic, Thracian, and Roman ancestry, with barely a trace of the original steppe Bulgar haplogroups that his ancestors had carried across the Danube 2 centuries before. The Bulgars had not been defeated. They had simply become Bulgarian. Now we come to the scene that defines Bulgarian history more than any other. Samuel. Samuel of Bulgaria ruled from roughly 976 to 1014 AD. He rebuilt the Bulgarian Empire after a devastating Byzantine conquest in 971 AD, almost single-handedly. He moved the capital west to Ohrid in what is now North Macedonia. He fought Emperor Basil II of Byzantium for nearly 40 years. An entire generation of soldiers on both sides knew nothing but this war. In the summer of 1014, Basil II finally won. At the Battle of Kleidion on the 29th of July, the Bulgarian army was surrounded in a mountain pass and overwhelmed. Basil captured approximately 15,000 Bulgarian prisoners. What he did next became the act that earned him his epithet forever. He blinded them. All 15,000 men, both eyes removed, every soldier, except, and this is the detail that passes into legend, he left one eye in every 100th man, so that the sighted man could lead his blinded comrades home. 15,000 men, walking through Bulgaria, in a column that stretched for miles, led by one-eyed guides, returning to their families and their homes, sightless, broken, defeated. When this army arrived at Samuel's court at Prespa, Samuel looked at his men and collapsed. He suffered what historical sources describe as 2 strokes in rapid succession. He died 2 days later, on the 6th of October 1014. Some historians have called it a broken heart. The medical reality, sudden cardiovascular collapse triggered by extreme psychological shock, is consistent with the ancient accounts. Basil II is called the Bulgar Slayer to this day. The First Bulgarian Empire ended, but Bulgaria did not end. It was reborn as the Second Bulgarian Empire in 1185. It survived Mongol invasions in the 13th century. It survived internal fragmentation. And then, in 1396, it fell to the Ottoman Empire. And for the next 500 years, Bulgaria waited. The Ottoman period lasted from 1396 to 1878. 5 centuries of foreign rule. 5 centuries of Bulgarian language, Bulgarian culture, Bulgarian orthodoxy, maintained underground in monasteries and villages against persistent suppression. The genetic impact of the Ottoman period, when scientists measure it, is smaller than most people expect. The Ottoman rulers did not replace the Bulgarian population. They taxed it, administered it, and occasionally conscripted its sons through the devshirme system, the collection of Christian boys to become janissaries. But the Bulgarian gene pool stayed predominantly European. The J2 and other Near Eastern haplogroups associated with Ottoman-era influence are present, but in small percentages. The Thracian EV13, the Slavic R1A, the ancient Paleolithic 1-2A, these survived the 500 years of Ottoman rule almost intact. Because the genes don't care about borders, they only care about who had children. And now we come to the man who ended the waiting. Vasil Levski, born Vasil Ivanov Kunchev on the 18th of July 1837 in the town of Karlovo, he came from a modest family. His father was a craftsman, his mother a devout Orthodox Christian woman who would preserve a lock of his hair for the rest of her life. He entered a monastery as a young man, took the name Ignatius, then walked away from the cassock in 1864. He shaved his hair, gave it to his mother, and never looked back. The Bulgarian people gave him a new name, Levski, from the Bulgarian word for lion-like. They had seen something in him. In the 1860s, Levski joined Bulgarian revolutionary circles in Serbia, participated in failed uprisings, and gradually developed a completely new theory of liberation. Not raids from abroad, not relying on Russian intervention, not waiting for the great powers to redraw the map. An internal revolution built from within by the Bulgarian people themselves. He walked Bulgaria on foot, village by village, mountain pass by mountain pass. He built a network of secret revolutionary committees, coded communications, encrypted letters, oaths sworn on the gospel and a knife. He called it the Internal Revolutionary Organisation, and he envisioned the free Bulgaria that would follow as something radical for its time, a republic, equal rights for all citizens, regardless of religion or ethnicity, Bulgarians, Turks and Jews alike. He was not just fighting against the Ottomans. He was fighting for an idea. But empires do not allow ideas to walk freely. In December 1872, Levski received word that the revolutionary network north of the Balkan mountains had been compromised. He went himself to assess the damage, travelling to Lovech, then deciding to collect the committee archive at Kakrina, a small village inn, before fleeing to Romania. It was the last free journey he ever made. On the morning of the 27th of December 1872, Ottoman guards surrounded the Kakrina Inn. Levski tried to escape. He fired shots. He was wounded and captured. The man who betrayed him, the man who gave the Ottoman authorities the information they needed, was Dimitar Obshti, not a stranger, not a foreign spy, Levski's own appointed assistant, a man he had trusted with the organisation he had built with his life. Levski was taken first to Tarnovo, then transferred to Sofia. An Ottoman Special Judicial Commission interrogated him for weeks. They confronted him with former comrades. They presented him with Obshti himself. Levski did not break. He admitted his own identity. He acknowledged what the Ottomans already knew. But he named no one, revealed no structure, protected every committee and every member he could. He stood alone against an empire. The sentence was handed down on the 14th of January 1873, confirmed by the Sultan on the 21st, death by hanging. On the 18th of February 1873, Vasil Levski was hanged in Sofia. He was 35 years old. No witnesses recorded his last words. No journalist was present. The Ottoman authorities had made sure of that. The world did not know it had just witnessed the execution of one of the 19th century's great democratic revolutionaries. His body was not given to his family. His grave has never been confirmed. Some evidence suggests his remains were buried under the church of St. Petka in central Sofia. In 1956, the skeleton was found during excavations there. It was never definitively identified as Levski. The mystery of his burial remains unsolved. What is known? A strand of his hair, cut when he left the monastery in 1864 and preserved by his mother, is held today at the National Museum of Military History in Sofia. It is the closest science has ever come to Vasil Levski's DNA. And here, the genetics become extraordinary. Because Vasil Levski came from the town of Karlovo in central Bulgaria, he was a Bulgarian Orthodox Christian of Thracian Slavic stock, the deep genetic core of the Bulgarian people. Based on his geographic origin and ethnic background, population genetics would assign him an overwhelming probability of carrying either I2A, E-V13 or R1A. The three haplogroups that account for over half of Bulgaria's male population. The lineages that trace back to the Paleolithic hunters who first inhabited the Balkans, to the Neolithic farmers who built the gold-working culture at Varna 7,000 years ago, to the Thracians who resisted every empire that came for them, to the Slavic settlers who absorbed the Roman ruins and made the land their own. And to the Bulgars, that steppe Turkic people whose Khans built the empire and whose descendants gave Bulgaria its name, 1.5%. The founding elite left almost no genetic trace, but the people they ruled, the Thracian Slavic population that absorbed them, married them, outlasted them, converted them, and eventually became them, are present in Bulgarian DNA at over 50% of the male line. This is what the genetics reveal about Bulgaria. Not an empire conquered from outside, a nation forged from within, by farmers and Slavic settlers and Thracian survivors who had been here for 7,000 years, and simply kept going. 5 years after Levski was hanged, the Russo-Turkish War of 1877 to 1878 liberated Bulgaria. The revolutionary committees he had built, the network he had refused to betray, even on the gallows, provided the organisational infrastructure for the Bulgarian uprising of 1876, which in turn drew Russian military intervention. Levski did not live to see the free Bulgaria he had imagined, but the Bulgaria that emerged from Ottoman rule was built on the foundation he had laid. In 2007, a Bulgarian television poll asked viewers to vote for the greatest Bulgarian of all time. Vasil Levski won. Not Asparuh, who founded the empire, not Simeon, who created the Golden Age, not Samuel, who died watching his blinded army, not Boris, who gave Bulgaria its alphabet. Levski, the man who walked, the man who built, the man who did not break. The Apostle of Freedom. Today, a monument stands in Sofia on the exact spot where he was hanged. Every street in every Bulgarian city carries his name or the names of those who followed him. The national football stadium is named after him. He appeared on the 1,000 banknote. And somewhere beneath the streets of Sofia, possibly under the medieval stones of St. Petka Church, his bones remain. Unburied, unconfirmed, still waiting. This is Bulgarian DNA. 1-2A, the blood of Paleolithic Europeans, carried here for 14,000 years before Bulgaria existed. E-V13, the Thracian lineage. The people who mined gold at Varna rode horses against Alexander the Great and refused to disappear under Roman occupation. R1A, the Slavic wave. The settlers who filled the vacuum Rome left behind built villages in the river valleys and became the demographic heartland of a new nation. And 1.5%, the ghost of the Bulgar Khans. The steppe riders who crossed the Danube built an empire, named it after themselves, and then dissolved into the people they had ruled. The closest genetic relatives of modern Bulgarians, Macedonians, Serbs, and Romanians. The countries that have fought over borders, language, and identity for centuries are, in their genes, nearly identical. History is complicated. Blood is simple.